The corpse king of Minos. There are plenty of horrible ways to end up dead in hell, but being murked for being too nice has to be up there. King Minos was, by all accounts, a genuinely decent guy, intelligent, persuasive, and a just ruler who looked at the lust layer and decided that eternal torment for the crime of loving someone was maybe a little too much. So when God ghosted the universe and heaven fell into chaos, Minos took the opportunity to actually reform the place, organizing the damned, building a grand city, and running what was essentially a functional civilization for people whose only sin was falling for the wrong person. Which was going great, right up until the Holy Council took over heaven and decided that improving hell was a direct violation of God's original design, which is why they called Gabriel, brightest of the angels, sent down to fix the problem. Minos tried to reason with him, but Gabriel struck him down mid-sentence. But because Minos' will was so strong that his soul was already halfway to becoming a prime soul, the angelic equivalent of a nuclear threat, heaven decided the safest move was to imprison his soul inside his own body, which is how you end up with the largest husk ever recorded, a shriveled, blackened, mummified giant with a stone crown, barbed wire holding his mouth shut, and glowing searchlight eyes scanning the ruins of everything he built. The body itself is puppeteered by parasites, specifically the snakes he used to command in life, now grown into something considerably worse. While Minos himself is trapped somewhere inside, fully aware, watching his own body tear apart the city he spent his afterlife building, and the cherry on top, the entire gluttony layer is accessed through his mouth. You literally walk into the next level of hell through him. Sisyphus Prime. The Greek myth version of Sisyphus was cursed to push a boulder up a hill for eternity, and heaven apparently thought that was such a great idea they decided to run it back on the Ultrakill version. The plan was simple: break his will with an impossible, unending task and hope he eventually gives up. Except Sisyphus was, in heaven's own admission, absurdly tenacious, the kind of guy who would smile through millennia of punishment while quietly waiting for the perfect moment to burn everything down. When God disappeared and heaven descended into chaos, that moment arrived. Sisyphus rose up, gathered every damn soul who'd had enough, and led an insurrection against heaven itself. A war so ferocious it shook the foundations of hell. Naturally, Gabriel showed up and ended it, murking Sisyphus in front of his army and holding his head up like a trophy, at which point the entire rebellion collapsed. Sisyphus knew he was going to lose. He knew even winning that battle wouldn't win the war, and he charged in anyway with a wide smile on his face, because to him, fighting an obviously unwinnable fight was the ultimate act of defiance against the guys in charge. Which is a direct lift from Albert Camus' 1942 essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, whose closing line, "One must imagine Sisyphus happy," appears verbatim in his terminal entry. After the fight, his soul was so powerful it started forming into a prime soul mid-death, the same nuclear threat classification that got Minos imprisoned, so heaven stuck him inside the flesh panopticon, a fleshy jail cell designed to keep prime souls from finishing baking. He waits inside it for someone to break him out, and so the player obliges. Minos Prime. Remember how heaven imprisoned Minos' soul specifically so it couldn't form into a prime soul, and how they were absolutely correct to be terrified of that possibility? Yeah, that ship has sailed. After thousands of years watching his own lifeless body dismantle everything he built for the people he tried to save, Minos' soul finally manages to shed the flesh prison and manifest as what heaven was trying to prevent: a prime soul, a being of pure will powerful enough that even the angels rank it as an existential threat. The result is a pale, bluish-white translucent giant with a visible circulatory system, a heart beating in the middle of his chest, an uneven crown of rectangular prisms fused directly into his head, and a hole where his face used to be. Two snakes are wrapped around his arms, matching decorations to the parasites that puppeteered his corpse for centuries. The very things he swore vengeance against are now permanent accessories on his own body. But he doesn't spend his freedom hunting parasites, or angels, or the council that ordered his death. He goes after V1, a machine that had literally nothing to do with any of it, because V1 happens to be standing there. His whole moveset is trained combat: dropkicks, snake projectiles, boxing combos, ground slams, the kind of vocabulary you develop over centuries of imprisoned rage rehearsal. And his final words after being defeated by V1 are him apologizing to the people of the Lust Layer for failing to save them from the cold, dark world. He doesn't rage and he doesn't curse Gabriel, he just tells his people he's sorry and then he's gone. Mirror Reaper. The 8th layer of hell is shrouded in enough mystery that even the terminal entries about it come with a shrug. What's known is that the layer disguises itself as a picturesque recreation of a peaceful surface community, and that extended exposure causes total collapse of your sensory information and physical space, at which point all contact with the layer is lost. The Mirror Reaper is the only reference point Hell has for what happens to the residents of that layer, and the terminal entry is quick to point out that it's the only one of its kind ever encountered, which strongly implies that whatever happened to everyone else was significantly worse than becoming this thing, because this thing is already pretty rough. A quadrupedal amalgamation of multiple husks fused together, stitched from 2 chest cavities with pulsating pale skin, 4 arms splitting into 8 hands, a headless upper half, and a bisected front left limb ending in a skeletal scythe twice the length of the rest of it. It exists between spaces, mostly inside reflections, so you'll only catch glimpses of it in mirrors as it stalks you through the level. At the end of the level, it introduces itself properly, at which point you notice the life-sized marionette of V1 it was operating from behind the scenes, complete with puppet strings still attached, which raises the immediate question of how long it had been rehearsing for that particular entrance. Once you kill its first health bar, it drops into the floor and turns invisible. The only way to track it is by watching its reflection in the mirror while it circles you with an oversized scythe. Its summons are worse, floating disembodied bloody hands that chase you across the floor and add hard damage on contact, up to 3 of them at once on brutal difficulty, and on that difficulty, the hands themselves are also only visible in mirrors. The layer designed to look peaceful is haunted by a headless octoped hiding inside your own reflection, and this is somehow not the worst outcome for its residents. Hideous Mass. Hell has a manufacturing process apparently. The way it works is that Hell Mass gets poured into a shell to create a demon, and normally the ratio is calibrated correctly. Sometimes it isn't. When too much Hell Mass gets crammed into a single shell, the whole thing overflows and bursts at the seams, creating what happens when someone at the demon factory refuses to read the instructions. The result is a hideous mass, a scorpion-shaped mistake with 8 legs, a stone shell that hardened around the overflow, and a bright red pulsating stomach hanging out from underneath a solemn stone face that serves as its actual head. Its arms end in mouths instead of hands, which fire yellow homing mortars capable of some of the most damaging attacks in the entire game, only surpassed by literal black holes. When enraged, the hideous mass flips onto its back, contorts its limbs to fire projectiles straight up, stains all of its tail faces red, and lights up every eye it has like a Christmas tree of body horror. It also has one unique interaction. In its debut appearance, you can bypass the entire fight by throwing a bar of soap at it, which is genuinely how you're supposed to beat it. It slips. Ferryman. Being a devoted follower of God in Ultrakill's Hell has some concerning implementation choices. Ferrymen are the transporters of souls between the layers, a role handed out by heaven to husks, whose blind faith is judged worthy of the promotion. The perk of the job is a holy cloth to wear over your face, gifted directly from heaven as recognition of your devotion. The requirement of the job is that you have to hate your own body enough to tear off all your skin and flesh, leaving nothing but bones. The terminal entry describes it as an ongoing project undertaken because they're ashamed of their human form, a reminder of the sins that stopped them from becoming angels. The holy cloth then slowly dyes their bones bright blue over time, apparently through sheer proximity to divine power. Their loyalty runs deep enough that at least one ferryman, upon being saved from drowning by Gabriel, immediately began carving statues of him across the entire boat and installing a permanent hologram that repeats Gabriel's exact words back to him on a loop. There's also the little detail that each ferry can only have one ferryman at a time, so when a new one forms, they hunt down the existing one, fight to the death, and keep the loser's skull as a trophy used to grant them passage across the layers. Which means every ferryman you meet is walking around with the skull of the guy they killed to replace, carrying it as their work ID. Like, what is this? The Predator universe? Now that humanity has been wiped out, there are no more souls left to ferry, and the ferrymen just wander around aimlessly waiting for heaven to accept them. Gabriel, apostate of hate. Gabriel starts the game as the most polished resume in heaven, most loyal, proactive, and diligent angel on the payroll who's personally trained the powers, killed Minos and Sisyphus, and cleaved the Leviathan into pieces before pinning the escaping souls back inside its head with a spear. He is, by every metric heaven cares about, him. He's him, guys. Then, a small red machine walks into hell and beats him in a fight. The council, being a group of religious middle managers who never met a problem they couldn't reframe as a purity test, decides Gabriel must have lost on purpose, because the alternative is admitting that a machine can outperform an angel, and that would be sacrilege. They sever him from the holy light and give him 24 hours to kill V1 or die. He tries again and loses again. By this point, Gabriel has started figuring some things out, like how his emotions during the second fight shift from rage to actual joy, how defeat at the hands of a machine feels weirdly like relief, and how the council's version of God has increasingly less to do with the actual God who disappeared. So he takes a break on the moon, sits by a campfire, and quietly realizes he's spent his entire existence enforcing a corrupted message on behalf of frauds. And so he realized that he could just walk into the council and basically clap everyone, which he does. The last counselor begs for his life on the grounds that Gabriel only has hours to live without the holy light, but Gabriel murks him mid-plea, walks out of the auditorium with the head in his hand, and holds it up for all of heaven to see as a wordless message to every angel that they no longer have anyone to answer to. Heaven immediately falls into pandemonium. The providences break a sacred oath to God just to chase after him, and Gabriel heads back to hell one last time for a final rematch with the machine that started all of it. He is, at this point, running on fumes and grief and the closest thing to purpose he's ever had, but by God, we're proud of what he's become. Earthmover. There's big, there's video game big, and then there's the Earthmover. The 1000 THR Earthmover is a quadrupedal war machine roughly shaped like a centaur. If the centaur were the size of a small mountain range and also had a functioning city built on its back, the entire level takes place on and inside it. You start at its feet, climb up the legs past stairs, cranes, and steam vents, walk across the residential districts installed on its neck, and eventually enter its head to fight its brain. Every Earthmover was built for one purpose during the final war, leveling entire cities. One of them was enough to reduce a city to fire and nothing else, which is why they got called the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. When the war escalated hard enough to make the surface uninhabitable, the surviving civilians packed up their lives and physically moved onto the backs of these machines, because the walking megastructure was somehow more livable than the ground. The war ended when the resulting soot and smoke blotted out the sun so completely that the Earthmovers, which fed on solar power in addition to blood, ran out of energy and started dying off one by one. The one you fight is standing perfectly still, locked in an eternal duel with another Earthmover in the distance, both of them firing lightning at each other but never taking damage because of some kind of invisible shield. Its internal chambers are lined with flesh and filled with boiling blood, because the machine that used to run on sunlight and human blood is now, presumably, running on whatever hell provides. Once you climb all the way to the head and destroy the brain, the whole thing begins self-destructing. You have exactly 70 seconds to get off before it detonates and kills you for 9,900 damage. The Earthmover is affectionately nicknamed Benjamin by the fan community. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe. Also, let me know what you want to see in the next video. I read all of the comments. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.